Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's it going, Sheikh?
Good. How are you? And
Alhamdulillah, I'm well.
else? How's your week been?
So far so good. Alhamdulillah.
That's good. Anything new?
Not much. We're going home for Thanksgiving, inshallah. Over here, it's Thanksgiving is coming up this Thursday.
All right.
But that
We
would
don't
be
have
nice.
that. It's a big thing in the States, isn't it? Thanksgiving.
It's pretty big. It's one of those family, one of those occasions where families will travel to get together.
That's good.
Yeah. I'm
Anything
sure
that
COVID
brings
is going to spike again, most likely.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Anything that brings the families together.
No. Yep.
And the thing is that there's no what I understand about Thanksgiving, it's nothing to do with religion.
Yeah, really, it's not. At least not now. And yeah, it's classically not really associated with religion. The issue is it is associated with American colonialism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
There's this Irish joke about Christmas. So, no problem, Zakaria. So the joke is, there's nothing wrong with Christmas as long as you don't bring Jesus into it. And that's it. It's religions become a secondary thing. I think most countries in the world.
Yeah.
I remember that I grew up in this country, and Sundays nothing opened, literally nothing, and then Parliament voted to open things for Sundays, and the practicing Christians were up in arms. They said, we're going to read out the names of every MP that voted for opening on Sundays. And now, then it was a big thing. Now, no one cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions from next week, or any questions before we make a start, inshallah? Nope. Okay. Right then. Zakaria usually reads the translation. We're on verse 188 and 189. Is that right? (188) and 189. And on goods for trade and on a credit incurred to buy and sell, and the amount due is the same as gold and silver. It is also due on anything stocked. Verse 189, the zakat is paid in gold or silver when taking possession of the price or of the credit incurred as capital on condition that the year has lapsed on the two. I think the commentary makes it a lot more clearer, because we're dealing with trade and goods that are traded. So the conditions determined for zakat on trade goods differ according to the type of trade. So the type of trade that renders goods subject to zakat is of two types. So because there's two concepts in this verse. So transactional trade, that is buying goods for quick resale, even if at a loss. And the second type is speculative trade. It is buying goods to sell when the market price rises. Now, we've made a start, Zakaria. So we're on, trade goods. So the conditions for zakat on transactional trade goods, that the merchant or person selling them gains possession of them through a substitute of either monetary value or subject to having its value appraised. That's the first. That he intends to sell them, that's the second. The third, that the goods intended for sale have a monetary origin, such as gold or silver, or a trade good. This thing of gold or silver, nowadays we will just emphasize that they have a monetary value, that there's a monetary origin for them. Because I can't think of anything that, that's on market that hasn't been bought or sold, and money has not, changed hands one way or the other. So that he appraises the value of the goods sold at the end of every year and then pays zakat from that amount. So that's, the conditions for zakat on transactional goods. Yeah. This is, in the verse, it says, tijaratul idara. Then the tijaratul ihtiqar. This is, speculative trade goods. So the conditions for them, in addition to the conditions mentioned for transactional trade goods, the following conditions must be fulfilled before zakat is due on speculative trade goods. That the person intending to sell them actually does so. Second, that the person sells them in exchange for cash. And third, that he takes possession of that cash. If someone, no, I'm not going to go there because it's going to confuse people. So that's, if this speculative trade goods, it's like, when people buy, it's like now, I don't know if you've been following, China's announced it's going into, cryptocurrency. So imagine now that you buy literally, however much you can, and you just store it till the price goes up, and then you sell it. That's what we're looking at. That zakat on debts, because there's three things that in these two verses. Zakat on debts, zakat, and these are debts that are due, not, these are debts due to trading. Yeah. So zakat is also due for trade debts when the following conditions are fulfilled. First, that the debt has a valid source, like money lent or a trade good. It's not a debt on a debt. That the source of the debt be in the possession of the lender at the time it was lent. Yeah. This is, when you borrow money, you put collateral down. That scenario. The third, that the source of the debt was either cash or a trade good. Because, traders will borrow on their stock. Okay, these conditions apply to both the debts owed to traders who operate on the basis of transactional or speculative trade, but the following conditions are to be fulfilled if the lender happens to be involved in speculative trade. That he takes hold of the debt owed to him, that the debt be paid in cash, that the debt repaid reach a zakatable minimum by itself or once it is affixed with other wealth owned by the person, that a complete lunar year has passed before debt is taken hold of. I know it's a lot to take in, but when you're dealing with trade, you got to make sure that you can actually trace where your debt is, because majority of people who trade, they will oh, I gotta go down a bit. They will borrow one way or the other. There's very few traders you will find that have the cash to actually keep going, however big or they happen to be. Uh, and I'm no expert on money. The other half is lot better at managing it, and that's what we decided to do quite some time ago. And there is something that needs to be added to last week's under Ain. I mentioned the mind stuff. So the mind minerals are of three types. One, solid combustible minerals that can be melted and fashioned, like gold, silver, iron, and copper, or similar. When someone discovers any of them, it is his obligation to pay 1/5 of the amount discovered immediately. The khums, to pay, immediately, even if it doesn't reach a nisab, and without waiting until a year has passed. So, when someone, mines, whatever amount they bring up, and they're done with that, then 1/5 of that will go to zakat. Solid incombustibles that cannot be melted and fashioned. So we're talking about precious stuff, sapphires, emeralds, crystals, of that. Whoever finds them acquires rightful ownership of them. The same principle will apply. Liquid minerals like petroleum and oil, it also belongs to whoever finds them. This is where the whole Muslim Ummah is losing out. Can you look at the biggest countries? Well, the biggest country that has the biggest in the Muslim world, reserve, Saudi. Do the public benefit? The Saudi family is the richest family in the world. Richest. So can you imagine, the khums going to the people? Again, it's if you're up to it, I've got something that would. Are people familiar with this companion called Abu Dhar al-Ghifari radhiallahu anh? Yeah. It's worth, if you want to understand where we are now, as an ummah, it's worth looking at his life. It's worth it. Anyway, the other thing from last week was, the Nisab for agricultural produce. Yeah, go on, Zakaria.
Sorry, just quickly to clarify, is it is the khums paid, sorry, on the net value of the minerals? So like what it takes to refine them and stuff like that, or is it just straight when the finder finds them?
Gross. Yeah. You're gonna refine them. That comes out of your pocket. Yeah. So agricultural produce, it doesn't matter if it's, fruits or grain. It's 610 kilos. 610 kilos. Once your harvest goes above that, you got to pay zakat. And with cash is 2.5%. Fruits and grain, again, it's 10%, depending on how it's irrigated. We talked about, irrigating last week. If it's irrigated naturally, 10%. If it's labor intensive, then it's 5%. Okay. Now then, we come to livestock, mashia. This is verse 190 to 200. If you can read that for me, and I'll just give you the sums rather than going too much. So from 190 to 200, inshallah.
190. Now speaking about zakat on livestock, we say that the representative of the imam should take one 1-year-old sheep for every 5 camels. A 1-year-old she-male fulfills the requirement for 25 camels owned. A 2-year-old she-camel is for 36 camels owned. For 46, a 3-year-old she-camel is enough. A 4-year-old she-camel discharges the requirement for 61 camels owned. 2 2-year-old she-camels are for 76 camels owned. And 2 3-year-old she-camels are for 91 camels owned. When there are 91 along with 30 more camels owned, take 3 2-year-old she-camels or take 2 3-year-old she-camels according to the opinion of Imam Malik. 195. When there are 30 plus 100 camels owned, then for each 50 full units there is a 3-year-old she-camel, and for each 40 full units there is a 2-year-old she-camel. And this is how it is for numbers that are greater. Its ruling is easy. There is a 2-year-old male cattle animal for each 30 cattle owned, and a 3-year-old female cattle animal for every 40 is written. And this rule holds for numbers which are higher. Then, for sheep or goats, give 1-year-old for 40 sheep or goats owned, and continue to give 1-year-old even if you have more than 40, up until and including 120. For 21 followed by 100, which was 121, 2 1-year-olds are due, and for 80 more, 3 are enough to fulfill the requirement until just under 400 are owned. And for 4 instances of 100, so for 400, take 4 1-year-olds. There is 1 1-year-old for each 100 sheep if the number owned is higher.
Okay. Now then, I'm just going to go through them in simple English. It's a lot easier. So if there's 5 camels, is 1 ewe of a 1-year-old. So for 5 camels, 1 ewe, that's a female sheep, 1-year-old. For 10, 2 ewes, both 1-year-old. 15, 3 1-year-old ewes. For 20, 4 ewes of 1-year-old. 25 to 35 is 1 camel, again 1-year-old camel. 36 to 45, it's a 2-year-old camel, one 2-year-old camel. 46 to 60, it's a 1 3-year-old camel. 61 to 75 is 1 4-year-old camel. 76 to 90 is 2-year-old camels. 91 to 120 is a 2 3-year-old camels. And 121 to 129 is 3 2-year-old camels or 2 3-year-old camels. So you've got a choice, male or female. The age is the same. 130 and over is 1 3-year-old female camel for every 50, and 1 female 2-year-old for every 40. Okay, so that's the camels. Now for what's it called? Cows. So from 30 to 39 is what 1 2-year-old calf. 40 to 59, 1 3-year-old female calf. 60 to 69, 2 2-year-old calves. 70 to 79, 1 2-year-old calf, and 1 3-year-old female calf. 80 to 89, 2 3-year-old female calves. 90 to 99, 3 2-year-old calves. 100 to 109, 2 2-year-old calves, and 1 3-year-old, no, 1 3-year-old female calf. 110 to 119, 1 2-year-old and 2 3-year-old female calves. 129 to 120 to 29, 4 2-year-old calves or 3 3-year-old female calves. This is for what's it called? What's left? Goats and sheep. So 40 to 120 is 1-year-old ewe. 121 to 200 is 2 1-year-old ewes. 201 to 319 is 3 1-year-old ewes. 400 to 499, 4 1-year-old ewes. 500 to 599, 5 1-year-old ewes. 600 to 699, 6 1-year-old ewes. And for every 100, on top of that, you add another ewe for, you add 1-year-old ewe. Okay, that's that done. Verse 201, there's a point that's very relevant to us. Can you read the translation for me? 201.
The zakat fiscal year for profit and offspring of livestock is the same as that of the original base capital or the animal's parents. This is also true for new wealth or animals bought or received as long as the original amount was past the minimum threshold value for both cases.
Okay. I'm only going to give you, the scenario for cash because none of us got animals. Okay. The scenario is you've got, 20 dinars that have been sitting there for 10 months. Then for the next 2 months, you trade with them and you end up making a profit of 10 dinars. So you end up 30 dinars. So question now, is the full 30 dinars zakatable or just the 20? Anybody want to have a go? It's not a it's not a trick question. You got to keep in mind that the thing, the rule that overwhelms everything within the madhab is the maslaha. Where is the greater benefit? So because the 10 dinars, the profit of 10 dinars was made from the 20, so the profit carries the rule of the capital. Yeah, so the full 30 are zakatable. The other scenario that Sidi Meyara gives is you've got 15 pieces of gold sitting there for 10 months, and then can you see that you're looking at majority of the time they're sitting. It's not that they're sitting there for 2 months. They're actually sitting there for 10 months. Yeah, the 15, and then you trade with them the 15 dinars for 2 months. You end up with 5 dinars in profit. The rule again is that of the capital. So because before 10 before what's it called, before the 10 months they were not up to the nisab, but because they were sitting there, the profit takes the rule of the nisab, of the capital. So the 20 dinars are zakatable. Does that make sense or no? Yes, Zachary.
Could you just repeat that? Sorry, I understand that something that if it goes above the nisab and you've kept it for 1 year and you make profit off that, that makes sense. That
if it's under the nisab and the profit brings it to the nisab, it's zakatable.
Right. And that's what this example is saying.
Yeah, that's what the example is saying. Because my own understanding of this, otherwise, it goes against the principle that, the money needs to sit there for a whole year. Yeah. Because, the 5 dinar is made in 2 months, the profit brings it to the zakatable. So there's maslaha in that. Yeah. So as long as within it comes to the, if we applied the the rule, the well-known rule, who loses out? Does anybody lose out?
It's the people that zakat is being paid to lose out, right?
Yeah, they lose out. So because the whole policy of the understanding of the madhab is maslaha, the general welfare. So they look at where the general welfare is. Is it sticking to the rule or benefiting the poor? So it will benefit the poor. Yeah. So, but it has to be sitting there. Majority of the money, is there, and then it's used for the last 2 months, or even for a month, and you make a profit. It will, goes over, comes to the nisab. You give zakat from it.
So what if the profit is greater than the original capital? That's in there.
More for the poor. More for the poor. Okay. Verse 202 and 203.
Shall I read them?
Please.
So 202. If the number of animals owned is between two tiers, then no partial zakat is due on the extra animals, similar to how there is no zakat due on wealth that is below the minimum threshold value. And also encompass in this ruling of being exempt from zakat. 203. Honey, fruits other than dates and grapes, and vegetables other than string beans, since all of these sources of nourishment can be stored and still be exempt from zakat.
Yes. Because this is, something which is the amal of the people of Medina. That, greens, there's no, so fresh produce that's, used. Um, uh, Honey, a case actually could be made now, but again, because our principle is we go by, the people of Medina, we're not going to change it. Honey can be stored, and it is stored. Uh, Fruit, again, a lot of fruit will go off quickly, so the greens will go off quickly. So there's no zakat on them. This is self-explanatory. I don't think it requires any commentary on it. Um, The same is, for 203, 205, and 206. Can you read that for me?
So we've done 203, right? And 204 is the minimum threshold for cash currency can be achieved from both types, like gold and silver, which are both from what is considered cash.
Mm.
205. Sheep are grouped with goats, and large two-humped camels are grouped with regular-sized one-humped camels. Similarly, cows and bulls with buffaloes are counted together.
Mhm.
206. Wheat, barley, and multigrain cereal crops are gathered together for measurement. Similarly, different string bean crops can be grouped together, as can different grades of grapes. Lastly, different grades of dates can be grouped together.
Okay. Now, again, uh, the one that is relevant to us is the first one. You can actually, the zakat al-ain, either, gold or silver. If there's, for instance, uh, you've got, 10 dinars and 100 dirhams, or, 150 dirhams and 5 dinars, or 15 dinars and 50 dirhams. So because they're from, the same genre, it's um, they will, if it's, the category from Ain, then you can't take, for instance, from, livestock and add it to Ain, or take from, agricultural produce and add it to livestock. It has to be from, each the three separate genres. Other than that, there isn't uh, much to say on this. But uh, final thing, because it does need to be said. It's jewelry, gold and silver jewelry. Um, if it is everyday use, let me take that back, because technically, if the woman wears her jewelry once in the whole 12 months, yeah, there's no zakat on it. But if she does not wear as long as it's jewelry and she wears it once a year, there's no zakat. If it is jewelry is bought as an investment, then it's zakatable straight away. But if it's jewelry and minimum is worn once a year, or someone else wears it, um, there's no zakat on it. Yeah. Um, we've come to the end of all the different types of categories. We move on to, the final two verses on Zakatul Mal, 207 and 208.
207. Zakat may be spent on the moderately poor, the extremely poor, the person fighting for Allah's cause, slaves to free them, the person who works to collect or distribute or manage zakat, the person in debt, the person whose heart is to be mended towards Islam, and the person who is far away from home and is in need. These people must be free Muslims, except it is valid to give to a non-Muslim zakat to mend his heart towards Islam. And one does not accept giving zakat to a person who causes one to have great doubts about whether or not he fulfills the requirements of being a target for zakat.
Okay. Now then, I've just read the messages that people are, because Saif isn't, and he's at work. Let me see if I can. How do I get into admin?
Sheikh, if you're referring to allowing people in,
Yeah.
yeah, so Safe actually gave that responsibilities to me. So when he leaves, I'll be admitting people, inshallah.
But again, you can do that?
Yes. So when Safe leaves, he's going to hand that control over to me.
Is he doing it now?
He's still in, but he can't speak.
He's at work, that's why.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know. I'm useless at it. It's being recorded, so inshallah they can catch up.
Yeah, and no worries. I'll be able to add people as well.
Okay. Mustaqim and Sanaullah are having problems. Okay. This, before we go into the 8 categories, these 8 categories, we don't have any control over, which categories money is given, zakat is given, and which are not given. And we can't, add additional categories. And what you'll notice is it's all individuals. There is no institutions, no orphanages, no madrasas, no widows, whatever. Yeah. These categories are taken from Surah Tawbah, ayat 60. Now, the first category is faqir and then miskeen. So category 1 and 2 is faqir and miskeen. Sidi Meyara defines a faqir as someone who has, yeah, but he doesn't have enough. So what we're looking at, we're not looking at for the week or for the day or the month. We're looking at the whole year. So when zakat was given, it was to take someone out of the poverty trap for the whole year, not just for that day or week or month. Yeah. The miskeen is someone who does not have anything, nothing at all. We would say he's the abject poor. And these two are the well-known, yeah, descriptions of the madhab. Now, Imam Lakmi uh, is a giant of a scholar within the madhab. He has a very detailed commentary on the Mudawwan al-Kubra. And his opinions are what, one of the opinions that Sidi Khalil relies on. He says, when someone claims that he's a poor meaning here, faqir, yeah, we accept it. Yeah, we accept it. We don't, as long as, his outward doesn't say the opposite. It's like, look, if he's claiming he's abject poor, he's a poor man and he's driving a roller, of course you're not. Yeah, so his outlook fits the claim. And if someone, and his family affirms it, his extended family or his neighbors affirm it. Nowadays, with modern technology, that can very easily be ascertained by states. The following, conditions, 4 conditions, are conditional for every faqir and miskeen. Yeah, every faqir and miskeen must fulfill these 4 conditions. First, they've got to be free. Can you understand why zakat will not be given to a slave? Yeah? Yes, Tahmiz.
His master may take it.
No. His welfare is the responsibility of his master because he owns him. So he's responsible for his welfare. So zakat money will not be given to them because someone else is responsible for the welfare. So has to be free. Second, they must be Muslim. So zakat is not given, to a disbeliever. Sidi Meyara brings in this thing of it's not given to, the people of Bid'ah and Hawa. Again, that's in our context, it's very, difficult. Depends on which school you belong to. They'll say that, you're deviant or a mubtadi or whatever. But the second condition is you got to be Muslim. Third condition is that, your welfare is not the obligation of another. So if it's a woman, her welfare is the responsibility of her husband. If they are children, then the parents. If they're elderly, then, if there's a son or sons who are responsible for their welfare. So any category of person comes forward, if someone else is responsible for their welfare, zakat is not given. We're looking at the categories of faqir and miskeen. The fourth category is that they mustn't be a descendant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the believers from the Banu Hashim. They are not given even voluntary sadaqah, and that's the mashhur position. Can people understand the reason why the Al are not given zakat? Yes, Zakaria.
Is it because they should be getting the khumus of everything?
Their welfare is that of the state. Zakat is given to non-Sayyid descendants of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so those are the conditions for the faqir and the miskeen. The third category, according to the verse, this is someone who fights in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A ghazi, a fighter, a mujahid. In the ayah it says bisabilillah, fighting in the way of Allah. So it's given to the mujahideen. You arm them for war, even if they are rich. However, it's not given to a fighter if there is no, war going on. It is only, they're only, prepared and armed if there's a war going on. This category, by the way, people have stretched it quite a lot. But uh, uh, the human mind, is very, alhamdulillah, they're very, imaginative. But it was, people who were guarding the borders of Islam and people who were fighting to defend to defend Islam. This is what, this category is for. The fourth category is freeing a slave. So again, the slave has to be Muslim. There was something that, historically that the Arabs had, which was, they would call, I think in English we would call it goodwill. So whoever freed the slave, I think it's a wrong understanding, by my understanding. Just because you've done someone something good, are they beholden to you for the rest of your life? Yeah. Here, we're not talking about, partially freeing someone. We're talking about, fully freeing them. So if there's a Muslim who has bought half of his freedom and doesn't have, the money for the rest of it, zakat can be used to fully free him. Or, if zakat money can be used to free any Muslim slaves that, Muslims come aware of. The fifth category, this is someone, the collector, or, the worker. They are given even if they are, rich. If they are poor, if they fall into the category of faqir, then, they will get from the zakat and for their work. The condition is that, the worker has to be Muslim, free, like, we've covered before. It's a condition that, Sidi Meyara brings forward, that they have to be male, they have to be mature, and they can't be from the al of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. There's something that you should write from me within brackets, because all our, detailed manuals do add it, is that, the collector must be knowledgeable in, the work he's doing. So they must know, the ahkam of zakat. About the dhukuriya, again, where we are now, it's a difficult one, because we have women working more than they were. As far as I know, I'm not aware of any of the sheikhs alive who insist on this. The sixth point is someone who's in debt. Yeah, someone who is in debt. And again, oh, excuse me. Yeah, I don't know how to let them in, because there are people waiting. I'm the worst one with technology. Excuse me. Okay. You know, the debt, again, just as the slave is, the debt will be paid in full. We're not, in our scenario, not, student loans or, the mortgage on your house. We're talking about, payday loans, or, people have ended up, with these loan sharks, small loans that, are making hell for, the people. And zakat money can be used to pay them off so they get some relief. However, if the loan is to do something haram, gambling or drinking or whatever, no, the loan is not paid off. Yes, Zakaria.
Sorry, just quickly to clarify. So one person paying zakat must fully cover the debt. So it can't be like a group of people coming together, putting their money in for zakat and covering the debt.
The thing is, how the text is looking at, it's not looking at the individual, it's looking at,
Right.
the state. In our scenario, it would be if, we knew someone who was, thousands of pounds in debt, and, we could get, 5 or 10 people together and pay off that debt. That would be the best way forward in our scenario.
Shukran.
Yeah. So if it is, if someone has got into debt by, sinning, drinking and gambling or whatever, then the debt is not paid. However, someone who dies in debt, when the janazah is done, there's usually an announcement made that, if they've got any money dealings, to approach the family. Here, if the family is not in a situation to pay the debt, zakat money can be used to pay the debt of the deceased. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yes, Tahmiz.
If the debt is, say, like interest-based, can we still pay it off?
Yeah. What you've got to look at is not, the debt is not. First of all, it's very difficult to get a loan without some kind of interest involved, and we're looking at, debts that will not be paid with zakat money. Is they are there to commit sin. Yeah. So if people are gambling, drinking, on drugs, any, the major sins, if money, and they've got into debt because of that, then that won't be. But again, you're not looking at the individual, you're looking at the family. It's that person who's doing that, his debts wouldn't be paid, but there'd be, some ease made for the family. Again, families and scenarios like this are not, so plain and clear cut. Okay. Are we okay on that one?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Number 7. This is, this is very relevant to where we are in the part of the world. This is mu'allafat al-qulub. To people who first, to make it easy for people to enter Islam. Second, once they've come into the deen, then, to make it easy, because certain people, lose their home, they've got nowhere to stay, food, clothing, so on and so forth. This is something that, as a community in this country, we're not, as organized as we should be. Yeah. This is something that, every city should have, or every neighborhood should have, where, they can welcome people. They can provide accommodation. They can, help them stand on their feet again. So with this, you're looking at two aspects. One, to ease people into Islam, and then second, when people enter Islam, to help them out then. Again, this is stretched by people who do dawah. Mu'allafat al-qulub is not dawah. Yeah, dawah, the community should put their hand in their pocket and do it themselves. It's literally looking after people when they come into the deen, or to ease their coming into the deen. Okay. And this, as I said before, this can be stretched, and certain people have stretched it to too much. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Zakir Naik, Peace TV and all that. They actually say they're zakatable. They actually collect zakat money. Again, horses for courses. The final. Yes, Tahmiz.
So the people whose heart may be brought closer to Islam, so that can be non-Muslims, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're looking at people who are genuinely not, you see, Muslims and the Muslim community shouldn't be, used and abused. We're looking at people who are genuinely, want to become Muslim, but it's difficult for them to leave. Yeah. So you can ease their, so you can make it easy for them to enter the deen. Not that you are giving them money to become Muslim, no. They'll lose a roof over their head, they'll get kicked out of their house, the support network is not there. These kind of things need to be, we're looking at. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I can't remember the Sahabi's name. He was an orphan, and he was brought up by his uncle, and he went. They were very poor anyway, so he only used to have a loincloth. And his uncle, he went and told his uncle he'd become Muslim. He said, "Look, is this how you reward me for having looked after you, brought you up?" And he says, "Look, that loincloth that you got wrapped around you, that's mine. Take it off and leave." Yeah. So you're looking at, I'm aware of situations where, teenagers are afraid to tell the family that they're Muslim because they know the consequences that will follow. And there needs to be support networks. I don't know if you are familiar with, there's a whole network that is developed worldwide now. It's called, the ex-Muslim network, and the amount of money they have is shocking. Yeah, we can't even match, a percentage of it. Okay, does that help?
Yes, Sheikh, that helps. Thank you.
The final one is, a traveler who's stranded. either they don't have money to continue the journey or to get back home, or they really don't have any money. They need help to get them back home. Yeah. So whatever scenario that you can come up with of a traveler, zakat money can be used to get a traveler, someone who's stranded from A to B, to get him back home. Yeah. So it could be, you're stranded in Scotland, you need to get back to Cambridge or London, or vice versa. Or, from the UK, to Singapore or China or wherever. Zakat money can be used to make sure that, they get back home. Now, the question that used to arise from this is that because majority of these people can pay the money back. So who do they pay it? The general understanding was that they would return the money to wherever they live, to the zakat people there. In our scenario where we are now, it should be returned. This is my take on it. They should just transfer the money back to the people that helped him get home, because there's nothing, technology is such that money can be safely returned. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yes, Zakaria.
In that case, does the person who paid the zakat have to pay it again because it's come back to him, or is it just fruits of zakat?
No. We're not looking at the individual. We're looking at
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah,
yeah. We're
sorry.
looking at the institution. No, the zakat money would come back and can be used locally, because the whole thing of zakat, which I think I should have mentioned, or if I did, I just need to remind that should stay within the 48-mile radius. Yeah. If the need is greater than within the 48 miles, then it goes outside. Yeah. Finally, Sidi Meyara underlines that the journey must not be to commit a sin. Yeah. So if someone gets stranded in Bangkok and we know what he went for, hard luck, mate. Yeah. There's certain points that Sidi Mayara raises. He says that zakat money cannot be used to build fences or walls or mosques or people who work in them, or to free prisoners. And if I can add that to build wells, to provide fresh water. No, that is not what zakat is for. The whole institution of zakat is to help individuals or families out of the poverty trap. It is not to help students who want to learn the deen. I know people will disagree with me on this, but you see, something that is fardul kifaya, zakat is fardul ain. Yeah. And it's there to benefit the majority of Muslims, not people who are teaching people the deen, or people who are studying the deen, or to put a roof on their head. Yeah. Muslim communities should have a fund where they can fund people to go and study or further study the deen. Zakat money should be used to reduce physical poverty from these 8 categories of people. Yes, Tahmiz.
For example, if I give money to a poor person and he uses that money for, I don't know, building a fence or whatever thing that you just mentioned that's not allowed, would I be liable for that? Or
No, the fence they're talking about is a defensive wall, or a defensive fence. In the desert or in
okay,
a semi-jungle. People would build them to protect the village or something like that. Not, uh, someone who's a fakir or a miskeen. If you give them, they won't waste it because people know that their whole uh, that's their money for the whole year. Yeah,
yeah, Jazakallah khair.
and people should be careful when they give their zakat to charities. It's really, really important. I can't emphasize enough. It is a fardul ain. It is a fardul ain. Just as someone else can't pray your prayer, someone else can't be responsible for your zakat. You are responsible for your zakat. Yeah. So if anybody's got any questions um, on zakat, because we've come to the end of it, we've just got zakat al-fitr left. So before we move on, and just take a pause, and if there's anything that didn't make sense. No? Okay. Yes, Tahmiz.
For last week's lesson, I could be mistaken. We did one line of 182, and today we started at 188. I'm not sure if you did part in the middle or if I missed it.
No, we did. We actually finished um, last week. Um, we began, the zakat. Did we do Zakaria? Did we do 82 and 83 and 84?
I don't think we read through them formally, but you did cover them because you spoke a lot about zakat from when we started. Like we didn't read them the line per line, but you went through a lot
Okay.
of what you.
What we'll do is look. It's Maghrib now. We'll come back and do those two verses, and inshallah, then we'll move on to zakat al-fitr. But we have covered it. But again, because we're doing the text, we'll inshallah go over it again. Inshallah, it's Maghrib. We'll stop and pray Maghrib, and then we'll be back. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Okay. So, Bismillah. So, what did we miss out? Verse 183 and 84. Yeah?
Yeah, I think formally we missed out. Yeah, until up to and until 188. So when you start talking about the merchandise today.
So we didn't cover 18. Okay. So 1, 2. So we missed out 5 verses.
Yep. But
Okay.
when you were speaking about zakat, you covered like bits and bobs of it generally.
Okay. Anyway, let's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi. 183 and 184. If you can read that, inshallah.
So 183. For gold, silver, and grazing animals, it is due every year, and for crops, it is desired when they are ready for harvest. 184. It is due for dates and grapes when they are ripe, close to sweetness, and for which gives oil. It is due when it is ready to give oil. And it is due for fruits, i.e., dates and grapes, and crops when they are ready for gathering, as long as the yield is past the minimum threshold.
Okay. So Sidi Meyara's commentary on this is that, in these 2 verses, one of the conditions of zakat, which is, passing of 1 complete year for ayn and, livestock, when they are, brought back from pasture, and, when the fruits ripen and the grain are ready to be pressed. Sometimes, these words, you got to, yeah, the grains are pressed. These are, one of the conditions of giving them out and giving the zakat out. Agricultural produce does not follow the rule of a complete year. So ain and mashia do, but livestock doesn't. Livestock is, when the harvest is brought in. The zakat from ain and an'am, livestock, this is when, a full year has been completed. And the judgment, the ruling is that, the full year is a condition of obligation. This full year, where we are, because we don't have any, national institution that collects it or governs it, and it's left to us. It's up to us which, what's it called? We use, solar or lunar. It doesn't make that much of a difference because, majority of our transactions are based on lunar. On solar, the solar year rather than the lunar year. The difference is only 10 days anyway. It's not that much of a difference. The zakat on, agricultural produce is when the harvest is brought in, on the grains which are used to press oil when they're ready for pressing, for dates, when they are ready. Now the nisab for each of these, especially, for agricultural produce, when these texts were written, the technology was not there for, to get the exact weight. So they would say that you estimate rather than, you guesstimate rather than, you start weighing. because they didn't have this kind of technology to do it. And this would be, wheat, barley, category of pearl barley. Yeah. A lot of these, I don't know how relevant they are. When you're looking at chickpeas, legumes, vegetables, black currants, nigella seeds, sesame seeds, radish, broad beans, grapes. Again, if we just stick to agricultural produce, it's a lot easier for us. Okay. 185, 186, and 187. Can you read the English for me, please?
Before you, can I ask a question to clarify?
Go on.
The discrepancy between lunar and solar is 10 days, right? Over a long time, so like roughly 36, 37 years, you're gonna miss out a year. Is it still okay?
No, you're going by every year. You're not going by.
Yeah, but if we count in terms of lunar years,
Yeah.
36 lunar years will be like, no, 36 solar years will be roughly 37 lunar years. So you'd miss a year in like a chunk of 40 years because there's the 10-day discrepancy.
Right.
Is that a big deal?
That is a big deal.
All right. So is it better to follow the lunar?
Missing out a year.
Yeah.
The poor losing out on a year.
Mm.
But again, it's how people do it. I know in the UK, people just go overboard over Ramadan.
Yeah.
In Ramadan, people give it every year. I don't know why, but there's nothing textually based for that. It's just people think there's no more barakah in giving, but it's an obligation, personal obligation. Again, if you're losing a year, then you don't want to lose a year. Yeah. As I keep telling you, I'm terrible at maths.
So it's 185, right?
185, 186, and 187.
So 185. The amount due for fruits and crops is 1/10, or half of that if the farmer used an instrument for irrigation. 5 wasqs, or 60 sa', roughly 609 volumetric liters, is the minimum threshold value for both types of harvests. For silver, the minimum threshold is 200 dirhams. And 20 dinars is the minimum threshold for gold, and 1/4 of 1/10 is a wajib on both gold and silver.
Okay. So here, the rates for these on Zakat al-Mal. We covered about, we talked about, the irrigation for agricultural produce. If it is a 10th, if it's naturally irrigated. If it's labor intensive, meaning that human labor is involved, then it moves down to 5, and that's the mashhur position within the school on this. I told you, it was 610 kilos. How is that similar to what you've got?
So it says roughly 609 volumetric liters,
Well,
which
there you
isn't
go.
always.
It's the same. Yeah, 610. Okay, this is how they the old weights. So the Nisab is 5 awsaq. Yeah, 5 awsaq, and awsaq is plural of wasq. Each wasq is 60 sa', and every sa' is 4 muds of the mud of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know what a mud is? Yes, two handfuls. Yeah. So whatever is above 5 awsaq, you need to give zakat from it. So in our times, it would be 610 kilos, and it's very easy for us to weigh that kind of stuff now. So you don't need to guess. So that's the nisab for agricultural produce. For ain, it's for silver, it's 200 pieces of silver called dirhams, and 20 pieces of gold, which is the nisab for gold. The grams, I've got the grams here somewhere. Hold on. For the silver is 592.7 grams, and gold is 84.7 grams. Now, how they arrived at those weights is a shari dirham. Yeah, a shari dirham is 55 medium-sized grains of barley with the whiskers cut. No, because barley has these long whiskers. Wheat doesn't. Wheat, the whiskers are short, but it's medium size, 55 grains of barley. And the weight of a shari dinar is 72 grains of barley, again with the whiskers cut. Just a note from me, our text, what impression do you get that there was a standardized weight? Is that the impression you get, don't you? These are all later standardized. These are not, they say Shara'i. This is not the weight of the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's a very famous Maliki expert on monetary things. His name's Imam Dawood. He died in 400, I think, 2 or 4 Hijri. And he has a book, it's called Kitab al-Amwal. It's like, one of the treasures of the madhab. And he people would travel from one village to the other. The dinars would not be, there'd be different weights. And when he was around, the Fatimid Shia, they were ruling North Africa. So it was something that, they had to standardize within their empire. So the Umayyads had their own standard, the Abbasids had their own standard. There wasn't, a standard. It's later that, they all came up with this. So anyway. Also, we already covered about, mines, minerals that are brought out, that they would have to give, ruba' ushur, 1/5. When, they brought it out. Whatever, because we went over that earlier on. So that brings us to where we began, 188. Yeah? Okay. Well, West Ham's gone. He's disappeared. Okay. Anyway, Zakat al-Fitr, verse 209 and 210.
Zakat al-Fitr is a sa', about 2 liters, and is wajib on every able Muslim and those whom he is responsible for financially, who are Muslims. It is given from the common staple food of people to fulfill the nourishment needs of a free Muslim for an entire day.
Is that it?
Yep, that's 210.
Okay. No, that's it. Now, before I go to the commentary, this is from me, because the text doesn't go into when does it become a wajib. When does Zakat al-Fitr become a wajib? It becomes a wajib from beginning of Fajr on the day of Eid. Yeah. So before you pray Salatul Subh, it becomes a wajib. When Fajr kicks in, it becomes a wajib. Once you understand the whole philosophy, because you see, Zakat al-Mal is something that, it's legislated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zakat al-Fitr is legislated by the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made it a wajib, the madhab holds it on par, that it's a wajib on par with Zakat al-Mal. The whole philosophy is that, it's what happens on, any people when they come together to celebrate. What's the main thing that goes on? Food. Yeah. So that's the thing that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam legislated, that, on the day of Eid, there shouldn't be any Muslim who goes hungry. That's the whole concept. And the philosophy behind it is that every Muslim joins in, the celebration of Eid. Okay. Yes, Zachary.
So it can't be paid before after Fajr on the day of Eid?
No, that's when the obligation kicks in.
Right.
That's when you are under obligation. It's like, Salatul Maghrib doesn't kick in till the sun is set. So
Right.
Maghrib is not an obligation upon you till the sun is set.
Right.
Yeah. And if you keep in mind, the philosophy is that, you make sure that people have food in their belly and they join in the celebration. So if people are poor, if you give them money in advance, what happens?
They'll probably have to use it beforehand, right?
Yeah. So that's the whole thinking on it. Yeah.
So just quickly, sorry. So can you give for someone to anticipate on the day? So like, can you give an organization that provides on the day?
If you trust them,
right?
You make them your wakil. It's like, when you give Zakat al-Mal to an organization,
right,
that you trust. You there's a verbal or written agreement made that they will fulfill the obligation of giving zakat to those 8 categories on your behalf, and they will provide evidence for that as well. It's the same with Zakat al-Fitr. What I do is I send it abroad, because it's I tried it a couple of years doing it here. It's very, very difficult. One year I had to go from Birmingham to London to give. And you don't want to be, in the days of Eid traveling.
mm-hmm.
And so if you've got, extended family, and that, people are not well off, or they know people who are not well off, and you just tell them, please don't give it to them before Eid. Yeah, you give it at Eid. I used to work for this charity It's a national charity. Well, it's an international charity, and we used to have this female doctor from London. She would say, "Look, this is Zakat al-Fitr, but I want the children to have shoes. I want the children to have clothes." I just wanted the money off her. I didn't want to have an argument off her.
Mm.
It's when you give zakat, you can't you, you can you can say a genre for zakat al-mal, but you can't say give this. It's not your money at the end of the day. Yeah. Okay. So from these two verses, we inform that the amount is 1 sa'. Yeah, which is four handfuls of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. The ruling is that it's an obligation, not a sunnah. Yeah, it's an obligation because it's an obligation upon a Muslim who has the ability to give it. If he does not have the ability, it drops from him. Just on this, the mashhur of the madhab is we don't actually stickler for that. For instance, you don't have it now, but you can borrow off someone. Fine. We're happy with that. Because people can borrow and give the zakat al-fitr because they don't have the money now, because we don't lay like the Hanafis say that the Hanafi position is that zakat al-fitr is given by people who have meet the Nisab for zakat al-mal. We don't have that. Faraj says, can you give it or not? If you can, I haven't got the money. Can you borrow? Yes. Okay, give. The understanding of this obligation is that it is specifically for Muslims and it's not an obligation for the kafir, because there's no difference made here in a Muslim that if he's free, slave, male, female, elder or minor. Yeah. So if you can give, you can give. And likewise, it's an obligation on a Muslim himself and those he is responsible for the welfare of. So his wife, his parents, his children, he will give. Or his slaves, that he will give on their behalf. And if they've got stepchildren or they will give on behalf of those as well. And if they have the ability to give on behalf of others, that's fine as well. Okay. Now, this thing that it's given out from what is the main food that's eaten. We've got now within Maliki scholarship two opinions. One is that still sticks to this literal meaning, that it has to be from food. One of my first itikafs in my life was in the Masjid al-Nabawi, and in Saudi, you buy the bags of barley or wheat. Okay, so I bought them and I gave it to the poor people that were standing round. So I walked off and then I turned round. You know what they were doing? They sold them back to the guy. I took the money. And I said, wouldn't it have been better if we just gave the money? And can you imagine now? Yeah, go on.
It's surprising that they allowed them to sell them back. No?
Who's to stop them then?
No.
No, what are they going to do with about a kilo of grain?
Mm.
Yeah.
Money is more useful in
Money
in
is
these
more
times.
useful. And the thing is that, in Morocco, Algeria, and other countries, um, you know, I know in Morocco because I'm familiar with it. They, each area has their own board of scholars, so they agree the amount, and it's more or less, agreed by the Hayya Kibar al Ulama, that the head that heads all of them, and it just trickles down, and they announce it, right at the beginning. I mean, midway through Ramzan, that it's this much, and they will tell you in dirhams rather than and it's much better. There's a very famous Moroccan Hafiz of Hadith. He passed away in the 1960s. His name's Sayyid Ahmed bin Sadiq al-Humari rahmatullah alayh. He actually authored a whole work on this, where he proved with convincing evidence that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, then the Tabi'een, and then from within the students of Imam Malik, they were okay with giving in cash as well. So you find that scholarship doesn't have a problem with this. People who want to stick to giving bags of grain, I don't know, what am I going to do with a bag of grain in the UK? Okay, if you gave me a bag of rice, okay, at least I could boil it. I could do something. But with a bag of wheat or barley, I don't know. So it's in the UK. I'm familiar that a lot of people will give their zakat al-fitr to the mosque. You don't want to know what happens to the money. Yeah. So it's better that you take charge of it. If poor Muslim family near you or in the locality that would appreciate the help, fine, give it to them. Otherwise, send it abroad, and they'll be more than happy to accept it. The obligation will stay on your head even after a year if you have the ability to give and you don't give. It does not end, with sunset on the day of Eid or 3 days later. The obligation will stay on your head. So give it. Even if you have to borrow, that's fine. Yeah. There is this opinion from Ibn al-Qasim that he says if you give it, 2 or 3 days in advance, it's acceptable. So, when you're sending money abroad, that does help. Yeah. Or if, people need to buy stuff because they're planning, then fine, you can help them out earlier. I don't have anything else to add unless, people have got any questions. We've come to the end of the book of Zakat. Okay. So we got about 15 minutes. We'll begin Kitab al-Siyam. Yeah. Kitab al-Siyam. Again, I want to, remind people, how Sidi Meyara introduces it and then how he defines it. Because these definitions are very, very helpful. So he says, we begin sorry, when we're finished with the third one, we begin with, talking about, the fourth foundation of Islam, which is fasting. Linguistically, it means absolute abstention. That's what it linguistically means. To abstain absolutely. Now, here's the Shari'i definition, and I would advise people, to, if they can, memorize it. So the Shari'i definition is a specific abstention, which is abstaining from the desires of the stomach and genitals for a complete day with the intention to come close to God. Yeah. So I'll go over this again. So Shar'an, it's a specific abstention, and it is to abstain from the desires of the stomach and the genitals for a complete day with, intention to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the sole reason that, you're giving up food and drink and observing your behavior is that, you want to come near in proximity to God, inshallah. The Shari Hukam, we already know that, it's an obligation. It's a fardul ayn. Fasting has conditions, obligations, prohibitions, and recommendations. Those are, inshallah, what will follow. So we begin with verses 211 and 212, inshallah.
Fasting in the month of Ramadan is wajib. In Rajab and Sha'ban, fasting is mandub. Like the first 9 days of Dhul Hijjah, and even more the last of these days, i.e. the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Arafat, for other than the person performing Hajj. Likewise, the month of Muharram, and even more recommended is the 10th of Muharram, the day of Ashura, in which the people of Musa crossed through the Red Sea and escaped from Fir'aun.
He's added that. That's not in the text.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Sidi Meyara, he says that, we're informed that fasting the month of Ramadan is a wajib, is an obligation. And it is recommended, mustahab, to fast the months of Rajab and Shaban. Likewise, it is mustahab to fast the first 9 days of Dhul Hijjah. And it is a stressed recommendation, mustahab aqid, to fast, the 9th, which is, the day of Arafat. And likewise, it is a mustahab to fast all of Muharram, the whole full month of Muharram. And the stress recommendation is, the 10th of Muharram, which is, the day of Ashura. As to the obligation of fasting the month of Ramadan, this is ma'lum min ad-din ad-darura. This is, from the necessities that we of the deen. Whosoever denies it has disbelieved. Whosoever accepts the obligation but does not fast it and breaks it, he is taught manners if it becomes well known. Yeah, he's given a good beating. But again, you see in Dahra alayhi that if it becomes known, who knows if you're fasting or not? Yeah. However, if he is brought to a mufti, then he can't be, taught manners. So if you're going to teach him manners, you give him a good beating and just let him be. But if you're going to bring him in front of the authorities, then you can't touch the man. Yeah, and that's the mashhur position. There is difference of opinion of the kufr, disbelief of someone who won't fast. Yeah? Because his fast can be made up. So there are those who will negate disbelief from him. Just as, prayers can be made up. As to the recommended fasts, they will be mentioned afterwards. Because, certain hadith have been transmitted in favor of them. Before we move on, the thing that the translator has said about that, the people of Moses were. If you go to the Muwatta, you find that, Imam Malik Rabbalan brings forward that, the fast of Ashura was something that, the Jahiliyyah Arabs used to do. They used to fast. It's interesting that, that one, something that is well known, was well known to the companions, anhum, especially the Muhajireen. That's not, made well, that's not well known. But, when they arrive in Medina, what the Jews are doing has become well known. Don't you see a paradox there? Yeah, go on.
Is there a reason for the Arabs to fast on that day? Or were they just doing it as our church tradition or something?
First of all, the Arabs were not known for, the people of Mecca. Historically, they descend, their practices descend from, Sayyidina Ismail, and he gets them from his father. So the fast of Ashura is not new. It is something that, was done historically, and something that they never forgot. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar, before the Prophet declared prophethood, he used to do Hajj. You familiar with that?
Not entirely, but I knew that people would go for pilgrimage, before the prophethood of
and the Prophet used to, but the difference was the Prophet would do, the rites that we do now, which, the Arabs had, which we inherited from Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, but, the Arabs had stopped. They had just kept, the tawaf, the sa'i, and, the sacrifice. They'd not done, the stoning and, the standing at Arafah and then staying, 4 nights at Mina. And, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed before prayer was made an obligation. You familiar with that?
Sorry, my connection just came back. Okay. I don't know if you said something.
I said, are you familiar that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed and the community prayed before even the prayer was made an obligation?
I'm not familiar with that.
In the Jami of Imam Tirmizi, Sayyidina Ali radhiallahu anh, he says that when the Prophet received revelation on Monday, and I prayed with the Prophet on Tuesday. And if you study, especially the seerah of Ibn Ishaq, or the summary of it, I'll come to you, Relwan, in a minute. Especially the abridgment of Ibn Hisham. The Sahaba radhiallahu anhum, they would escape. They would go to the valleys outside of the inhabited area and look for valleys, and they would go and pray there. Especially Doha, when the sun is fully up. And there's an incident where Abu Talib comes looking for his son and says, "Where have you?" He says, "I've been with my brother, we pray." And he says, "Okay, that's fine." But the thing is that, the prayer was no different to the way that we pray now. Wasn't, anything extra different. So the Hajj it's like what the Prophet ﷺ did is he brought things back. It's like the last Hajj, the farewell, which is called the farewell Hajj. The hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. The Prophet ﷺ said that, everything has come back to its original, it's like, like there's an orbit and everything comes back to their original orbits. And he said everything has come back, and so he said, what day is this? What month is this? What year is this? Well, he didn't say year, but he said month and day. And the Sahaba said, we were afraid to answer because, he might change the name of the day, or the name of the month might change. But the Prophet said that, today everything has come back, because, what the Arabs used to do was they would, take 1 month out and put another one in, and take it out from here and put it over there. Because, the 3 months that were haram when they couldn't. So, they felt like a fight. Okay, we'll take that one out. We're going to have a fight. But then, the Prophet said that today everything has come back in line to how things were. Yeah, Rilwan.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying about the Prophet ﷺ praying before, because I always did find it interesting. Like, we were told that he would worship in the cave, but I always thought we didn't quite know what his form of worship was.
Oh, we do.
Our revelation. Okay.
Oh, that's the thing. We do.
Huh.
We
and
do.
It was similar to our salah.
Yeah, similar. And the thing is that, what he would do is that, the whole concept we have now of itikaf. Yeah.
Right.
That's what the Prophet ﷺ would do. But it wouldn't be an itikaf like we have, because his family would go with him. And he would, people would come up. Has any of you been?
Yes.
You been?
Mm-hmm.
You walked up Jabal al-Nur?
Oh, no, sorry, no.
Oh, God. You got to do that. When you go next, inshallah, you got to do that. And, when I went, I was still in my 20s. And no, I was in my 30s, sorry. And it was difficult. And, the Prophet would do this in his 40s. Yeah. But again, I'd recommend, this is the thing that you see when you read, the Seerah of Ibn Hisham. Because, what we've got now is that, everything is solid. Yeah. We solidified things that were actually fluid. Because we're talking about, Jabal al-Nur. How do you think revelation began?
Right. He would go to. He was. He had a habit of going to the cave.
Yeah.
For worship, right, for a time.
Yeah.
And then he would come down after that time, right? And as I understand it, it was in one of these occasions where he had already had this custom, and Jibril alayhi salam comes to him in one of these occasions.
Yeah. That's the one you've bought into.
Yep.
Okay. Zakaria?
Yeah, it's a similar thing. That's the idea I've got. That's the story I have. Yeah.
Okay. Now, continue with the story. Doesn't it raise questions? Because the thing is that, if we accept this version, that you see, he sees the angel and he's frightened. Yeah. The angel, embraces him and then, forces him to read. And then he comes down shaken, frightened, and his wife, covers him with a blanket. He's shivering. And then when he settles down, he tells Sayyidah Khadija salamun alayha, and she takes him to whom?
Waraka.
Waraka, who is?
Her cousin, who is familiar with the Christian scriptures.
No, who's a Christian.
Right.
So to me, that's problematic. Here, our Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam's first revelation needs verification from a Christian.
Can't that part be problematic and the first half be accurate?
No, you can't, chop and choose. You got to buy one version or the other. Yeah. Now that's why it's so important that we really study the seerah, and because Ibn Hisham is one of the oldest ones. Alhamdulillah, now even Imam Shahabuddin Zuhri's Maghazi is in English. This year I had delivery of Imam Malik's teacher. Musa bin Uqba. He died in 141 Hijri. So he actually died. When you read these Maghazis, the things that are solid for us at that time, they were never even an issue. So Muhammad ibn Ishaq's seerah is one of the complete seerahs that was authored at that early period. It's not early enough, but it's early. And then Ibn Hisham abridges it. He actually gives us two versions. So let me share the second version with you. And when we finish, read Surah Najm. Yeah. So the Prophet sallallahu, this version is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in the cave, as normal. He would go and do itikaf, and people would come because he was very generous. He would feed, and his servants would be coming up and down, helping him. And Sayyidah, some other, Sayyidah Khadija would be there as well. He falls asleep in the cave. Jibril comes. He recognizes him because he'd been seeing him in his dreams before, because he used to see him in his dreams, and he told Sayyidah Khadija about it. Then he asks him to read, and he does embrace it, but he's not, being just told, just read what? He's actually being presented a book to read from. And the Rasul says, look, I'm not one who reads. Yeah. So then he wakes up. Yeah. He wakes up, nothing extraordinary. He's not shaking. He's not, sweating. He comes out and he's about to, go, come down the mountain. And then on the horizon, he sees him again. And he looks at him, and his heart is still. He's calm. He's content. And Jibril says, come, and he makes him sit next to him. It's like, some kind of platform that he's sitting on. And he says, you are Muhammad, the messenger of God. Oh, sorry. No. He says, I am Jibreel. I am a messenger from God, and you, Muhammad, are the messenger of God. And he calmly comes down, and then he goes, to the other side, of Mecca. And then he looks, and it's like, he's trying to, do I need to just ignore this? Because he's already come to my dreams. He's already, and then, he raises his head, and it's like he covers the horizon. And then he comes home and tells his wife, Khadija, the one I used to tell you I see in my dreams, I saw him physically. And this is what he said to me. He's not frightened. He's not shivering. He's not needing a blanket. And, she gives him something to, seats him, looks after him. And then she goes to a Christian slave who's knowledgeable in Christianity. And she says, have you ever heard of this? And he says, that must be the namus. And that's the first time she hears the word namus. And then she carries on to her, cousin, Warqa. And he says, yes, the one he has seen is the one that, came to Moses, and the one who came to Jesus. And he is the namus. Doesn't this sit better?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Sheikh, I actually have been kind of skeptical of the watercolor bit for a while because of what you said, but I don't think I was so troubled by the Prophet being shaken, since
no, because the thing is, it's like when you when you have it's like Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, in Surah Taha and other parts of the Quran, when Allah introduces himself to Moses, what happens? The burning bush.
Mm-hmm.
What does the voice say?
Tells him, don't be afraid.
No, it says, take off your shoes. This is a holy valley.
اخلع عليك إنك بالوادي المقدس طوى.
Yeah. And he says, Fana Rabbuka. And I am your Lord. And there's no, shaking. There is no sweating. And this is more in line with the Quran. And then in Surah Najm, read it. Because the thing is that Imam Ibn Hisham, he actually brings those ayats. It's a beautiful. I think there is an English translation. I don't know how good it is, but there is an English translation. And if your Arabic is good, then the Rawd al-Unf of Imam Suhaili. It's an amazing work. It's one of the treasures of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because very rarely do you find such a detailed commentary on the Seerah, especially by the caliber of a muhaddis like Imam Suhaili, who's a hafiz of hadith. And if you ever go to Marrakesh, his tomb is one of those that's visited. But again, I would encourage you to read the Seerah, especially Ibn Hisham's. If you can get Ibn Ishaq, that's even better. But Gulliam, in the 1950s and 60s, he put it together from manuscript and translated into English. But it's not as, because Ibn Hisham is transmitted. Ibn Ishaq, the transmission is cut. But inshallah. Anyway, next week we'll pick up from how the month of Ramadan is begun. Sayyidah Maryam, no, she was not afraid. The afraid thing is that, she was, again, it's a different category. Sayyidah Maryam salamun alayha is not a rusul. She's not receiving a risala. There is, difference of opinion. Well, the agreed upon position within the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that, we don't have any female prophets. But then when you go into the nitty gritty of it, what's the definition of a Nabi? Is that he receives revelation. So what Sayyidah Sayyidah Maryam salamun alayha, what she received was revelation. Because Sayyidina Jibreel came in human form, and the wording is such that he was, a complete human. But again, if what you've always, when you're studying Seerah, if it does not link with the Quran, then there's a problem. And Imam Shahabuddin Zohri's, Kitab al-Maghazi is worth, getting hold of. Yeah, it's called the Expeditions. And Muammar ibn Rashid is a tabi'i, who transmits it, and Imam Shahabuddin Zohri is, a tabi'i. So it's, again, one of the oldest ones. But then I was trying to, where I've put, here we go. It's by, Musa bin Uqba. This is, first time it got printed this year. He died in 141 Hijri, and he's one of the teachers of Imam Malik. And Imam Malik was asked, who should we study, because at that time it wasn't called Sirah, it was called Maghazi. And he said the Rajul Salih, the saintly man, Musa bin Uqba. And it's an amazing work. It's amazing work. But inshallah. Anyway, we'll pick up next week, inshallah. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.